Columbo is easily one of the best detectives in all of television history. Known for his shabby appearance, his general social unawareness, and his relentless persistence, he's definitely a change of pace from most TV detectives. Each episode opens by depicting some sort of situation where a character is driven to murder. The episode then follows the situation as Columbo starts investigating and becomes a thorn in the side of the murderer. The murderer usually dismisses Columbo because of his goofy demeanor and his seeming incompetence. But as Columbo continues his investigation, he proves far more intelligent than he originally seemed, causing the killer to become more and more frustrated until he's eventually caught in a web of lies that Columbo cleverly exposes. It's an amazingly done show, and it's a stark contrast to the gritty, cynical cop trope that's become very common in media nowadays. If you've never seen the show before, it's definitely worth a watch. I'll list the best episodes to start with on screen. But putting aside the quality of the show, what lessons can we learn about Columbo from a theological perspective? And what lessons about Catholic virtue can we learn from watching it? That's what we'll be discussing today. The first and perhaps most apparent observation one can make is the simplicity of Lieutenant Columbo. He does his duty and he doesn't overly concern himself with worldly affairs. The people he investigates are always wrapped up in superfluous and worldly affairs, and they burden themselves with their attachments to temporal and fleeting things, such as wealth, power, and success. This leads to them becoming unhappy and restless. Since their ultimate goal in life is to serve their own concupiscence, they'll never feel satisfied. They'll always want just a little more wealth, just a little more power, just a little more fame, a little more success. And the lengths they're willing to go to increase until they're willing to kill to serve the god of their appetites. As the prophet Isaiah says, "The wicked are like the raging sea, which cannot rest, and the waves thereof cast up dirt and mire." Contrast this with Columbo. He isn't concerned with power, success, or money. He simply wants to do his job and do what's right. And this is perhaps why he's not rattled or bitter. We've all seen the stereotype of the hardened detective. He spent too much time facing the cruel realities of life and being put into morally gray situations, and over the years, it leaves him cynical and disillusioned. But out of the countless bitter, hardened detectives, Columbo stands out because he maintains inner peace in the face of the ugly realities of life, such as murder, greed, and brutality. He doesn't let these things shake him, and he has, for lack of a better term, a certain type of stoicism to him in the way that he can remain cheerful after so many decades of working in homicide investigations. And if we look to the example of Jesus, we see something similar. There was no one more intimately familiar with the sins of humanity than Jesus, who saw the sins of every person and suffered so that they could be forgiven. Think of the most horrible acts ever committed by human beings. Jesus was aware of these things. Yet he wasn't bitter or cynical because of these realities. He was quite firm when the situation called for it, but he was just as easily able to dine with others and not be overtaken by anger, passion, or useless cynicism when faced with the ugly realities of humanity. Think of the exhortation that Christ gives his disciples in Matthew 10:16. "Behold, I send you as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and simple as doves." Columbo embodies this perfectly. He's harmless and simple. There's nothing threatening about him. Yet, at the same time, he has his wits about him. He's only threatening to those who want to get away with evil. And because of Columbo's simplicity, honesty, and virtuous living, he's able to maintain an interior peace, while the people he investigates are wrought with anxiety and trouble. As Thomas à Kempis says in The Imitation of Christ, "A good life makes a man wise according to God, and gives him experience in many things. For the more humble he is, and the more subject to God, the wiser and the more at peace he will be in all things." But in addition to his simplicity, the character of Columbo also displays a sort of Christological humility. One thing that quickly becomes obvious when watching the show is that, at any given time, Columbo is the smartest person in the room. He's incredibly perceptive, logical, and quick on his feet, but he doesn't flaunt this fact. In most cases, people dismiss him as a fool because he presents himself in such a humble manner, and he doesn't vainly present himself as a man of intelligence. As he says in one of my favorite episodes, Columbo Goes to College,
"Sometimes when you know something, it's better you keep it to yourself. You don't have to blab everything right away. Wait. Who knows what will happen? Timing. That's important."
This usually ends up being a way by which he brings about justice. Criminals often prematurely dismiss him. Because of his humble and oblivious appearance, they don't take him seriously. This results in them revealing too much and eventually being caught. Similarly, Christ uses his humility and outward appearance to bring about good. Christ is the most honorable and praiseworthy person no matter where he is. Because Jesus is God, he is infinite in glory, power, goodness, and anything else that is praiseworthy, but he chooses to present himself as a servant. He spent 30 years serving his family, healed countless people with infirmities, washed the feet of his apostles, died on the cross, and now offers himself in the Eucharist for the salvation of sinners. None of these things were necessary for Christ. He never had to offer salvation to anyone, and he never had to assume human nature and subject himself to the humiliations he faced while on earth. Yet he presented himself as a servant to bring about the salvation of sinners, which was a greater good. Columbo, in a sense, has the same Christological humility to him. By not showing his intelligence, Columbo is able to bring about a greater good of justice. Similarly, Christ presented himself as a servant so that he could bring about the greater good of saving sinners and serving as an example for the rest of humanity. When the time is right, Columbo manifests his intelligence so that justice can be satisfied. When the time is right, Christ manifests his glory also for the satisfaction of justice, though, in Christ's case, it's to satisfy eternal justice instead of temporal justice. So with all of this in mind, what are the main takeaways? What lessons about Catholic morality and virtue can we learn from watching Columbo? The first is to live simply. Don't grow attached to the world and its affairs. Once you make success, money, and fame your primary concerns, you'll be willing to do anything in pursuit of these goals. If your own vanity is the God you serve, you'll be driven to immorality. This immorality will make your heart grow restless and you'll never feel at ease. Instead, we should be like Columbo. He's simple and humble of heart. He isn't concerned with increasing his wealth, advancing to positions of power, or being recognized for his efforts. Because of this, he's more at ease and he isn't driven to immorality. The second main lesson that we can learn from watching Columbo is to be humble in all things. Don't flaunt your talents or think yourself better than others, even when you do genuinely have more talent, success, or ability. Even though Columbo is the smartest person in the room, he doesn't go out of his way to make it known. He keeps his talents and abilities hidden because he doesn't seek after his own glory, but instead after what is right. We shouldn't do anything for the sake of glorifying ourselves. Avoid every opportunity to boast. No matter what our talents are, there will be an opportunity to use them for good without us having to go out of our way and seek our own glory. As Christ said, "Whosoever shall exalt himself shall be humbled, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted." So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Columbo. If you haven't seen the show, I again highly recommend that you check it out. It's a charming show with a lot of interesting characters and plot lines. Expect to see a lot more of these Theology Of videos in the future with more recognizable stories and characters. Let me know what you guys thought of this new format in the comments, and I'll see you all next time. God bless.